Okay, just to start with this round, just to set the expectations, we will stay today with a session regarding product as a service. Around 10-15 minutes we will cover just going through PowerPoint slides, discussing, okay, what does product as a service mean? How is it related to current sales models, sales or business models? And then we will actually jump into the system and talk about challenges that you might face in an ERP system in your IT environment if you want to go to such a business model. Okay, let's start with the first slide, which shows the evolution of business models. What's the traditional sales model? There is the customer perspective, but there's also the supplier perspective. From a customer perspective today, if you buy a product, it's your own, it's in your fixed assets. You have to take care about the maintenance, predictive, preventive maintenance. And from a customer perspective, sometimes it might be a little bit inflexible because at a current point, you might need this kind of equipment, this kind of material, this kind of environment, and your business situation might change. But then you have invested into certain materials, certain equipment, and you could sell it again, but then you lose money. On the other hand, on the supplier view, there is the perspective that you have an immediate one-time revenue if you sell a product, which is quite nice. The value that you sell to a customer is mainly the product itself, and for quite important is also that the customer relation might end with the sale of the product if you do not have a good reason to come back to the customer, discuss the next sales, and so on. So it's rather a limited relation with the customer. What does product as a service mean? Product as a service might, from a customer point of view, mean that they pay per use. They pay dependent on the time they keep the equipment, whatever they use. In a real product as a service model, they do not have to take care about the maintenance, about any repairs. This is covered by the manufacturer, by the supplier. And for sure, for a customer, it looks way more flexible because if they don't need it, they can step out of the contract. They might be able to change equipment, whatever they need. From a supplier perspective, it means mainly in the beginning that we change the model from one-time sales, one-time revenue, to a recurring revenue model. If you're involved selling Microsoft licenses, you experience the same thing within the last couple of years. We always sold the license with the one-time revenue. And now we have the subscription model where we rather do invoice monthly, and also the utilization might change. The value that we sell as a supplier, or that a supplier might sell to its customer, is not only the product itself, it's the combination of a product including the service. And for sure, because it's an ongoing relation with the customer, we always have the chance to do upsell. So that's the whole idea behind it. We all have heard a lot of times, if we saw other presentations at this Ignite, we heard a lot the word disruptive business models. I don't know if this is a disruptive business model, but it can be. It depends on how you create your processes, how you design your processes, and how you define the business model. Some ideas what kind of shapes of products as a service might be existing. Number one is, for sure, we had this phrase already on the last slide, pay per use. We see a crane here. So traditionally, you might have sold a crane. If you are a rental company, if you're already in that area that you rent out to customer cranes, for example, you do not sell it, then you might rent it out related to time. Customer needs it for 2 or 3 days to lift something, you invoice the customer for 2 or 3 days. But right now, for example, we are involved in a project where customer wants to invoice the customer by lifted weight. So that's another, it's the actual value for the customer is the actual lifting, the lifting of weight, and therefore one of our customers wants to change to this model. Then for sure, renting and sharing, classic car rental, truck rental, but sharing models are getting more and more popular. And here you might even want to think about combined models where you share or where you provide mobility. Mobility might mean somebody in a certain situation needs a car, in another situation this person needs a bike because he's somewhere downtown in the metro area. But the next day, because he's moving from A to B, he needs a truck. And a real good mobile mobility solution might provide a customer the possibility to use all those using, for example, one app. Then leasing models, we see a coffee machine here. We have a customer that rents out or leases coffee machines to its customer. But they do not only invoice per time, they invoice, for example, per coffee brewed or per coffee sold from these machines. And then for sure, pooling, where somebody provides containers to its customers, and those containers are moved between different customers, but the customer only might pay for those containers as long as they have them on site, or only even if they use it. If you especially want to invoice in such situations by use, by utilization, then for sure an IT integration is always very good, because then you can track directly when is the equipment actually used and how much might you want to invoice to the customer. In real life today, this is a lot of times just done by receiving a list from the customer, Excel lists or something like that, and then you simply key it into the system. But this is for sure a problem, because it causes a lot of effort to do it, and it might cause the problem that the customer does not provide you with the right data in the right format. So this is definitely a challenging solution, and the possibilities that we have today with IoT integration will move this forward significantly from our perspective. A lot of our customers are moving to IoT scenarios. So the next two slides will cover some experiences we have with a certain customer. For example, Doka. Doka is a manufacturer of formwork, concrete construction equipment, and they actually started to rent this equipment already in the 80s. And in the early 2000s, they were looking for a real ERP system supporting this. And since then, we developed the system together with them. And today, they rent out their equipment to customers in more than 60 countries. It's a quite large system with, I think the system itself has something like 3,000 named users. Another idea is not from the construction industry. It's actually the largest train rental company in Europe. They rent out trains and locomotives. They just decided to move to Dynamics 365 around 1 year ago. They are going live soon, and with the basic Dynamics 365 for operations. And the next steps for them are, because trains are for sure a high investment equipment, they plan to do IoT integration. They want to include predictive, preventive maintenance to support the best service for the customers. Other scenarios, one you already saw was the coffee as a service idea. So this is something, we have a customer doing that in a B2B scenario, where the customer actually says, I need a coffee machine with a certain configuration. This is delivered, and then it might be even a solution where the coffee is fully included. So there are different levels that you can supply, that you can provide to a customer using such scenarios supported by the system. So the system, if you have an integrated coffee machine providing you with the information how many cups of coffee were used, then you can even predict the demand of additional coffee beans that should be in place for this site for this coffee machine. So here in this scenario, IoT integration is quite important. Also, mobility as a service is a scenario which is actually not fully covered only by Dynamics 365. From my perspective, because it's a B2C scenario, you need a very well-designed app where a customer, for example, has the possibility to choose, I'm at the moment here, right now I need a bike because I only want to go somewhere 2 miles away. Where do I find the next bike? But from there, he wants to drive home, he wants to have a car, he wants to see on the map where is this car, he wants to do a reservation. When he gets to the car, the app should be able to open the car, he should be able to see the information, is the gas tank full, how is gas invoiced to the customer, is this included or not, is mileage included, is it just time related? All such invoicing information have to be handled within the back-end system, the back office system, like for example Dynamics 365 for operations. However, all those informations have to come, for example, from a connected car and from the app. That needs to be well designed, as I mentioned, because it is a B2C scenario. Okay, this is actually, or this was already the PowerPoint part of the presentation. Now we talk a little bit, if you want to move to such a scenario, to such a product as a service scenario, what are the challenges you're typically facing from your business perspective? Number one is, if you are in the traditional sales model, you may purchase something, you may, if you're a manufacturer, you manufacture something, and then you sell it. So what's the typical process there? You have it in the on-hand inventory. The value of the product is also kept in the on-hand inventory. You sell it, posting on the normal accounts in the background. Nice, done. Equipment or whatever item you sold is away, and hopefully it never comes back. The scenario in a product as a service scenario is different because it's not in the on-hand inventory anymore. The value is not in the on-hand inventory anymore. The value is in the fixed asset because it stays your equipment, whatever it might be. It might be a car, the coffee machine, whatever. It's still your equipment. And therefore, the requirement is actually that on the one hand side, you have the value in the fixed asset. You have to do there the depreciations and so on. Sounds nice. Nearly every ERP system can support that. But on the other hand, you want to maintain this equipment. You want to dispatch it. And therefore, to have these possibilities, you still need it in the on-hand inventory. And that's actually, in a standard ERP system, usually a challenge. However, Dynamics 365, surprise, surprise, has a solution for this. And so what you see here is standard Dynamics 365 for Operations Enterprise Edition, including an ISV solution that supports scenarios, for example, in this case, to have inventory, but have the value in the fixed assets. So what's the structure here? Let's, just to explain you first the structure, go to released products and go to and search for one of my example items. And if I write it correctly, then I will find it. So for example, this equipment, and in this structure, this is just an item. The item defines kind of equipment. So for example, if we talk about cars, this might be, for a rental company, typically, this might be a mid-sized car, a small car, or luxury car. Or if we talk about a coffee machine scenario, it's a certain kind of coffee machine. However, this is not the actual physical equipment. The physical equipment can be found here if we click on the button Equipment. And here we see that of this kind of equipment, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 serialized equipment on stock. And if we take a look at this table, we see this is on-hand inventory. So we see it, if we go to manage inventory, we see this, where it's located and which warehouse it's located. But at the same time, we see the relation to the fixed asset. So we have here a one-to-one relation between one physical equipment and one fixed asset. How do we manage this in the system? We do this in a scenario, the scenario I will show you is actually purchasing an equipment. It works the same way coming from manufacturing, and the whole idea behind it is simply that, let me check here, I've prepared one purchase order, correct, here. So this is a prepared purchase order. In this scenario, we think we want to purchase this new equipment to bring it in our on-hand inventory. But the same would work, the same what I will show you works with in the manufacturing module, in the production module, or with a standard on-hand inventory to fixed asset journal. So the additional functionality you see here is also existing there. So normal purchase order, in the background there's the order header. Here we have the order line. We want to purchase one new equipment. In this case, it's only one. We keyed in directly one equipment number, so the number of the physical equipment. And if we go here to the fixed asset tab, you find number 1, the button, new fixed asset. Quite nice. That's 100% standard. You find that in every Dynamics 365 operation system. This simply means if you post this purchase order, it's directly posted to the fixed asset. The value will be only in the fixed asset. There will be no on-hand inventory. The magic radio button here is this one, fixed asset with on-hand inventory. If we switch this and post this order, the system will, on the one hand side, create the fixed asset, but on the other hand, it will create physical equipment in the on-hand inventory. So let's post this through quite fast. Confirm this. And as soon as it's confirmed, I can already post the receipt. So if you know Dynamics 365 for operations, this is really the fastest way to do it. Just no further process in the background that you can for sure in real life use. Post the receipt, and with this receipt, I'm a little bit confused right now. That's what I forgot. Wrong button. Okay, what happened now? The system has received the physical product and has created in the background automatically the fixed asset. If we post now the invoice, and also here I have to key in some invoice number from our supplier and post this, the system has now already, I click here on directly on the fixed asset, and as we can see, the fixed asset is created. The net book value is in the fixed asset, but if we go down here in this section, we see that this fixed asset is related to the physical equipment. Okay, that's quite the quite easy integration here. In the background, there is a little bit more functionality for sure, what is also happening here is if you, for example, sell this equipment later on, it might be beyond repair, you scrap it, or you sell it, then the fixed asset fixed asset integration will help us again, because as soon as we sell it, there will be a fixed asset journal created in the background that will reduce the value of the fixed asset. Typically, if it's sold, it's 0. If it's scrapped, there might be a remaining value. So this integration is also there. So let's get back to the next challenge that you might face. Contract duration and pricing models. Within, again, a standard ERP system, you have for sure the possibility to simply say, I sell something, and then you have the delivery date. But this does not mean that you can key in a duration of a contract. And on the other hand, you have total different pricing models. You do not pay just per each, per rate, per whatever. It's time related, it's utilization depending. How is this handled in the system? To cover this scenario, let's go to the main page of operations. And here, in this case, called this tile product as a service. And there are different ways to handle this. In some scenarios, you might want to use projects. This is especially very true in B2B scenarios. In other scenarios, where it's rather a simple scenario, where you just provide some equipment combined maybe with services, and maybe you want to sell something too, you want to use standard sales orders. So we stay simple here today. We go to New on this tab and say New Sales Order, which means we utilize standard Dynamics AX functionality. However, if you know Dynamics 365 for Operations Sales Order, you will realize that this is not standard. You have a from until date. That's the contract duration. Let's say this customer needs something from next Monday until a certain date in the future. Doesn't matter right now. And then you can define how you want to invoice them. So there are already some additional further functionalities here, and a customer would be great. Okay, let's create the sales order. So this is still standard sales order. You will just see if we add here, you see the rent from until date. So that's the contract duration. And we have the order line. If we add a line here, this is still all standard. We use an equipment, and then for sure in real life you would, I guess, choose the actual serial number of the equipment that you want to deliver later on in the picking process, but we pick it right here. But here, in the next field, you see something that you won't find in the standard system. You have the sales type. So in this case, in the master data, this equipment is typically for rent, but you could change this to sales. This would trigger a normal sales process, and you can see that the unit price to sell it is 5,000, therefore the net amount is 5,000. However, if you want to do it based on time and rental, you see that the net amount changes. There are further possibilities with regards to pricing options. If we take a look here, for example, per line, you can see that the rental period it's defined on the header level, but you can change the contract duration per line. That's not a problem. The next important thing is the price reference code. For this equipment, it's usually rented out or provided to the customer based simply on time, related to, let's say, a daily, a monthly, an hourly, a quarterly, whatever price unit. But you could also rent it out by operation unit. And let's say we have, in this case, we predict, later on only actuals would be invoiced, but we predict that it's going to be 50 operation units, and this time, in this case, hour, could also be miles, whatever, or cup of coffees. And then we have the price, and as we can see, if I change this, the net amount up here changes relating to this. I could also go to time and operation unit. This means I can invoice this based on time. Let's say it's per week 100, but in addition, €1 or $1 per cup of coffee. That's also possible. Or included times are possible. You define per week the price is $100, but in those $100, already 100 cups of coffee are included. Everything above that is another 50 cents. So that's a combination you can go for. Cool. Let's keep this simple. It's time related. So therefore, we have a price per time unit per day, which, by the way, this is a table in the background. You can set up your price units however you want. If it would be monthly, we can see that it's 1.97 months, because I did not really take straight months. And therefore, this price is now based on a monthly invoice, amount. Let's go back to daily. Okay, we have a duration of 60 days. We have a price per time unit of $10 per day, and therefore the planned net amount is 60. And this is what's going to be invoiced. So, by the way, invoicing is always a struggle. If you have to check always manually, okay, which contracts do I have to invoice? And therefore, there's a small help here, which is created on the customer level already, but I want to show it to you. You can actually set up the invoice interval independent of the price unit and so on. So if you, for example, want to invoice this customer every 2 weeks, you just say weekly, every second week on a certain day, or you simply say monthly, upfront afterwards, or quarterly, however you want to invoice this customer. And the batch run creates the invoices automatically in the background. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. That was the part where we wanted to cover contract duration and pricing models. There are, by the way, even more complex pricing models we can cover here, but I think about pricing we can talk about 4 to 10 hours. However, what's the next challenge? The location of the equipment under contract. The typical problem is if you use a standard system, you post a delivery note, and if you post this delivery note, the item you sold is gone. And as I mentioned, the main hope is hopefully it never comes back. In such a product as a service scenario, you, number one, hope that it comes back, because otherwise you have to call your insurance. And as long as it is on customer side, you still want to know where it is. And that's quite a challenge. However, no big surprise, I guess. There is a solution, otherwise I wouldn't show it. So if we post now in this situation, if we go to pick and pack and simply post the packing slip, the system, because the line type, the sales type was rental, creates automatically a virtual warehouse, a temporary virtual warehouse. And with this delivery note, this equipment is not now posted out of our stock, it's posted to this virtual warehouse. You might believe me already, however, I show you to you anyway. So we have the rental, we call it the rental stock. If we click on this button, it's actually a warehouse that was created in the background, so standard warehouse, but with enhanced information. So we know the actual equipment that is there. We know the customer, which is related to this warehouse, to this rental warehouse. We know which equipment is there. We know when it was delivered, when is the planned return date, so rental, the contract end date, and the actual dates are there. We also have further information about how long, until which point is it already invoiced and so on. And for sure, we have not, this is only the perspective of one contract. There are forms where you can see, okay, what is on site at customers overall. So that was the rental site stock. Next one, planning and execution of service and repairs. We saw we can deliver the equipment, we know where it is, but if it's a real product as a service scenario, the customer is not responsible for repairs, for service and so on. And even if he caused a damage, you do not even want that the customer does this repair. You have your own contractors, your own service partners, or you do it on your own. So therefore, you might even tell the customer, even if whatever is not working, you have to call us, we will take care about it, because you do not want it. How can we handle this in the system? Jump back. And scenario number one is not preventive or predictive maintenance. Number one is actually just a repair. This is quite simple. We go back to where we just were. We go to the rental stock. And because this equipment is on rent, is under contract, we simply can create, using functions here, a new workshop order. This workshop order, the system knows that it's under contract. So therefore, system asks us, for which customer should this workshop order be created? Standard is that a repair might not be caused by the customer. Therefore, the system asks if we want to post this against an internal account, that's an internal customer account, or if we want to invoice the customer for this repair. If we say answer this with yes at this point, the workshop order, the repair, will be not invoiced to the customer. And from here we create a workshop order. In the workshop order, you can plan what spare parts are used and so on. Or here is the integration with the Dynamics 365 Field Service app. You can simply transfer the workshop order information to the Field Service app, and there a dispatcher dispatches which field service technician shall do the repair. On a mobile unit, ideally, the field service technician will post the spare parts he's using. He might even give information, is it correct that we do not invoice the customer for this repair, or should we invoice the customer for this one, or even just for parts, for some parts, but not for the time. And then this gets back synchronized into the operations app, and from here we simply do the invoicing. So that's the idea how we do an actual repair. And there are, if we talk about preventive maintenance, let's go back to, or we can directly go to the equipment number here. I can show you directly here. On the equipment level, we can handle preventive maintenance by defining service intervals. Here, there is one example already set up. It's standard inspection, which shall happen. And with this inspection related to this product, a certain maintenance list is included. So, for example, it would be an oil change. In the workshop order, in the actual repair or the service order, there should be already the oil filter, the oil, and the service time that you need to execute this kind of inspection. The frequency can be predefined. The iteration every 4 months, for example, in this case, such an inspection shall happen. And or if it's not time related, or if it's combination, all 5,000 in this case hours, this kind of inspection oil change should happen. And whatever comes first will be executed. A batch run in the background will show a dispatcher the demand to execute such inspections or the service appointments. And if 5,000 hours comes before the 4 months in this case are reached, the dispatcher will see, okay, here's something due. And ideally, how is this driven? You have, once again, an integration with the equipment, because then this is the equipment information. As you can see in the standard, there are per equipment 2 meters available. And if you have the integration, this counts up automatically. You get an update. Not the real life today is service technicians drive around and take a look. Okay, what is right now the number on the meter, and then they key them in manually. But this is quite complex, and it's it takes a lot of time to do that and a lot of costs. And therefore, if the equipment is connected, we have those informations fully automatically, and the system can create actually service orders fully automatically. You do not even need a dispatcher planning those. It's simply that somebody has to decide which service technician shall execute such a service appointment. Okay, that's on a very high level the part of workshop orders and predictive maintenance. And then for sure, quite important is if you keep the equipment, if it's still your own equipment, you might want to collect a lot of data about it. If we talk about certain industry, medical industry, where you provide medical devices, it's even mandatory to document nearly everything. So how is this handled in Dynamics 365? Let's go back. We have still the rental stock open. However, now I simply go back to my released products. I search for my equipment that we worked with today. Choose this one. We go to the actual equipment. We see that we have now one more equipment here. That's the one we purchased. However, here in the equipment number 1, we have a little bit more information. And if I go to the details here, and if I go into what is called the equipment file, I have all the historical information. For example, sales and purchase order information. So we see here the related original purchase order. Could also be the original manufacturing order. If I would have sold this equipment, I would see the sales order. All invoicing over the life cycle of this equipment is in this file. We also see all transportations in case this is needed. On the other hand, we have all finance postings that were posted to any account. We have all the fixed asset transactions to the different books. So in this case, so far, there was no depreciation run for this equipment. And in the area of service, we see all workshop orders that were done. So we have the history, what spare parts were needed for or were used for repairs, what were just simple inspections, what were actual repairs, what were those repairs caused by. We have the information of the operation unit consumption. If it's done simply daily, then you would see the daily consumption. If you do it manually, like in this case, then you simply see, okay, in which process step was it tracked and who did actually document the utilization of the system. And those can be the numbers if you use operation unit-based invoicing that are always also invoiced to the customer. Further information you have here on the equipment are, for example, if we go to workshop and service, you have the list of damages a damage might be if you use, for example, if equipment is returned, you may want to combine this return with a quality order where certain quality checks are mandatory. And if, for example, a damage is identified, you can document this damage in the quality order. And then if the damage is actually documented here in the system, from the damage you can create a workshop order to repair this damage. So the workshop order is therefore related to the quality order, which is important to follow certain documentation needs of some industries. For example, medical industry definitely requires this. By the way, there are, for example, the utilization per equipment group. Such informations are available in the system for sure. Revenue, time-related revenue, financial utilization, keywords, quite important to this industry, are documented in the system and are available too. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint, to the last slide. So what we covered in the last couple of minutes, 30 minutes around, in the system was, on the one hand side, we did standard procurement with a standard procurement purchase order. We posted this to the on-hand inventory. At the same time, we put the value into the fixed assets. As I mentioned, at the end of the life cycle, this integrates again with the fixed assets. Journals are posted or created automatically. And at the end, we collect all the data. We can handle all the service using Dynamics 365 for operations in combination, from my point of view, ideally with the field service app. And in the end, we collect all the data related to equipment over the life cycle. Finished. We have 2 minutes and 20 seconds for questions before I get thrown out.
Can the IoT suite drive some of the parameters that you have set up for consumption-based billing?
Yes, that's the idea. Alpha trains, for example, this one, it's very essential for them. And for a train, it's not really a big investment to do that. If you talk about a coffee machine, but they do, the coffee machine manufacturers, they do have integrations in the meantime. It's interesting. And then sold from that warehouse. Actually, yes, we have that. It's quite interesting. The question is if we can also use this for consignment stock. Actually, some of our customers are doing it, have only did this for this. They do not need the actual pricing models and so on. They need, it's medical devices, artificial knees, and all the screws you need there. You have to document everything. And therefore, they delivered it to the hospital. They know where it is. They even still know they have to do inspections on it every certain amount of months. What's it called, to get it cleaned or whatever, one more time. And when the hospital tells them, okay, we've used it now, then they post directly a sell from rent. They rent it for zero. The rental, sometimes they might even, just to provide it, they invoice a small amount, but when it's sold, they sell it from rent. So sell it from rent is one of the functions. I didn't show it in the rental stock, but there was a button, sell from rent. So you sell it directly from rent. Further questions? 11 seconds. Okay, then, thank you very much.